See Magalhaes coming off of a top 4 last weekend in 4th place on the leaderboard here in the second Open of the year. Whitehouse, though, he's on the top 32. Had a great season last year as well.
Yeah, Magalhaes taking second at our Players' Championship, putting up just a stellar performance. Although his record and legacy wasn't very good, but did not lose very much in the other 2 formats.
Got the ones that matter to him mostly.
Right.
Second place, really good. Magalhaes starts off with Snow-Covered Island, Arkham's Astrolabe. Prowess for Evan Whitehouse is going to give him a Mountain and a Monastery Swift Spear, so Magalhaes to 19. Turn 2 for Magalhaes, another Astrolabe. See what he has for his second land. This is where things could start getting explosive.
Yeah, this is the kind of start that feels like Emery's coming down and he's just trying to figure out which land to fetch. Now, if he wants to unlock some stuff, maybe, but could just be choosing to play the island and saving those fetch lands later for Mystic Sanctuary, you know.
Yep, just Island Emery, flips over a Mox Opal, Oko Fatal Push Scalding Tarn as well.
Gotta say, the likelihood of Emery untapping is pretty low against Mono Red Prowess, I would say.
Yep, they have a good mix of answers, and Whitehouse, I believe that these players are playing 4 Burst Lightnings this weekend. Yeah,
a lot of Burst Lightnings, and you would think that Burst Lightning in general would not be super good just because the kicker costs 4 mana, but playing it as effectively a shock, but later in the game or with Runaway Steamkin can do that extra damage is pretty huge.
So there's no answer to the Emery. Swift Spear attacks, there's no block, that makes sense. Magalhaes to 18, and the follow-up is going to be that turn 2 Runaway Steamkin. We'll see how far that goes as we go to Magalhaes, who has an Aether Spellbomb and uses the Emery to bring back that Mox Opal that he milled.
Now, this might be just a situation where Whitehouse actually values sticking the Runaway Steamkin as opposed to prioritizing killing the Emery Lurker at the lock. Because there was no Engineered Explosives or Aether Spellbomb in the graveyard, it's possible that he just wanted to get that Steamkin online before dealing with the Emery.
Magalhaes rounds out the turn with Scalding Tarn and a second Aether Spellbomb.
It's a decent amount of interaction, but the spell bombs don't actually kill the problem. They're, you know, I would much rather see something like Pirate Spell Bomb here, but the Aether Spell Bomb will be interactive in the right ways, and it can be recurred over and over again via the Emery as long as Whitehouse doesn't kill it.
Right. As you mentioned, Whitehouse might have just been spending that second turn on the Steamkin because he thinks the payoff is higher than Emery. There's plenty of answers to Emery in the Prowess deck.
Yeah, at this point I don't expect Runaway Steamkin to basically do much of anything, at least not for a few turns, simply because those Aether Spell Bombs will bounce it if it's about to get that third counter.
Mountain number 3 for Whitehouse. That's kind of at the point where you're comfortable using a full Lava Dart on an Emery.
Oh, for sure. I think that Emery and to an extent Gilded Goose is one of the reasons why we're seeing fewer Lava Darts out of these Prowess decks and more copies of Burst Lightning, because normally you would think Lava Dart, wow, that's an exceptional card in a Prowess deck, gives multiple triggers for 1 mana and sacrificing a land, but the utility of Burst Lightning, just dealing that extra point of damage to those really important 2 toughness creatures is a big deal.
There's a crash through from Whitehouse. Steamkin gets his first counter.
I know you're just like dying inside, though.
Well, I'm just I'm trying to do play-by-play. Personally, for my money, I would cut Lava Spike.
Sure.
But
I mean, I sideboard Lava Spike out a lot.
Yeah, very regularly.
So, in my opinion, like it's a good Goldfish card, but like I feel like most decks in the format are trying to interact, and cards like Lava Spike are really bad when that's the case, in my opinion.
It's also just terrible against Oko.
That's true.
Can
it even hit Oko?
It can hit Oko, but they sure gain a lot of life, so your Lava Spike's pretty embarrassing.
Yeah, it's also like at 6.
Yeah, it can hit half of an Oko.
Great.
All right, so here is Burst Lightning, targeting the Emery. Got a second Prowess trigger and a Steamkin trigger on the stack here. Now, Magalhaes is probably contemplating Spell Bomb, because if you let the Steamkin go to 2, an instant can put it at 3 right away, might start to run away with the turn.
Right. Interesting to note, Magalhaes, I believe, is playing a little bit of interaction this weekend. 2 copies of Abrupt Decay and 2 copies of Fatal Push. Similar list to Daryl Ayers, if not the same 75. And Fatal Push could be the play on the Runaway Steamkin, but he chooses to use the Spell Bomb instead.
It was a fetch to 17, and then Spell Bomb. Going to bounce that Steamkin here.
All right, this might be a Lava Dart and Flashback and make 3 mana in response. If that is the case, then Magalhaes is going to have to pop the Spell Bomb here in response to the Flashback of the Lava Dart.
So Lava Dart now on the stack. That one's going upstairs.
And I think if you're Magalhaes, you actually let this Lava Dart resolve, and then you can respond to the flashback Lava Dart with the Ether Spell Bomb, because everything's still on the stack. You know, the Spell Bomb ability is on top of the second counter, and then the third counter is kind of looming or whatever.
So the dart goes off. Magalhaes to 16. That's going to be flashback right away. Going for that third counter on the Steamkin. Remember, Burst Lightning on Emery still on the stack.
Right. And these darts have to be going up top, right? Just because the Burst Lightning is already targeting the Emery.
Right. You would not expect a counter spell on the Burst Lightning necessarily. Though you could see like a Metallic Rebuke out of some of these Sultai Urza builds.
Yeah, I think they actually moved away from it this weekend, though.
Yeah, Magalhaes not on that one.
Yeah, they're very interactive in a progressive way, thanks to Fatal Push and Abrupt Decay and Ether Spellbomb. Those are the 6 interaction points you don't necessarily see much in the other archetypes, or in the other version of the archetype, rather.
Dart goes off. Magalhaes to 15. Steamkin now has 3 counters. So you got to figure Whitehouse has a plan for that mana.
They're trying to figure out the stack because it is rather complicated, but long story short, Wild's going to make 3 mana. Steamkin's going to come back to hand, and then he can use that 3 mana to cast a couple different things.
Yeah, the floor is just like recast the Steamkin.
Right. Now this Monastery Swiftspear has quite a bit of prowess on it. Crash through, Burst Lightning, and 2 Lava Darts, and whatever is cast off this extra 3 mana here. So
now it's like we're seeing the Spell Bomb resolve. Steamkin bounced. Check in on that Burst Lightning again. That should be resolving and banning the Emery. These stacks are fun on Magic Online.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is actually something that I would much prefer to deal with on Magic Online because it's much more clear to all competitors like what is happening.
And now Magalhaes is going to use that other Ether Spell Bomb just to pick up his Emery.
Okay, I can kind of dig it. That Emery is possibly his only real payoff here, and the fact that it can continually rebuy the Ether Spell Bombs and potentially keep the Runaway Steamkin in check over the course of multiple turns is desirable. However, that Emery isn't the best against these red decks, but if it's all he's got, it's all he's got.
Steamkin's back. The other floating mana is going to be used for Light Up the Stage, as the Dart did go upstairs. Steamkin to 1 counter. Fiery Islet, Manamorphose. Those are pretty good hits, assuming Whitehouse doesn't have more lands in hand.
Right.
Swiftspear is going to rumble across. It's that 5 spells cast, so 6 damage if everything is accounted for. Get confirmation, but I believe Magalhaes goes to 9. There it is. And here is the Emery redeployed.
Milled over 2 Mox Opal, but I think the real story here is just those 2 copies of Ether Spellbomb as potential points of interaction for Magalhaes. Though, this Prowess deck seems like it's kind of running him over. He could potentially have something like Cryptic Command here for a tap draw, but that really just stems the bleeding. It doesn't really solve the problem.
Flooded Strand go for Magalhaes after that Emery.
I feel like that's just the common theme here with Magalhaes against the Mono Red Prowess and these Urza Ogo decks against the Prowess decks in general. They don't have a lot of hard answers, but Magalhaes deck does actually have a couple.
In my experience, the matchup I think is relatively close, but the games seldom are.
Sure.
Where the Urza deck, if they just curve Haymakers, they should beat you.
Turn 2 Oko, turn 3 Urza, just GG.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if this is happening, they're casting 1/2s. You can beat that pretty easily.
Right.
There's the Fiery Islet off the Light Up from last turn. 2 mana being tapped. The Manamorphose cast as well. Steamkin to 2 counters. Red in the pool.
Looks like Lavadar was the pickup. This might be... Well, there's a good chance that Whitehouse can threaten lethal this turn. It's just going to be on whether or not Magalhaes has some form of interaction. Could be a Cryptic Command, maybe a Fatal Push, but I doubt it. I think that probably would have been used main phase to kill the Runaway Steamkin before it gets out. Well, before it runs away.
Right.
You know?
Second Steamkin with that floating mana. The first one to 3 counters. You can cast a lot of spells with 2 Steamkins.
That's true, especially if you got Lava Dart going, you know.
All right, so the first one's going to use those counters. 3 red mana floating. And 3 cards in hand, plus a Fiery Islet as an option for Whitehouse. Probably going to see a lot of damage coming across this turn.
Yeah, and this is a spot where something like Burst Lightning actually starts to get out of control. Runaway Steamkin, you know, obviously there's some contention in this slot in the deck. I know that you are not really an advocate for Steamkin, but it is looking pretty good here, and it's looked pretty good all weekend. So I don't know where I lie personally.
It does look good in the games that are easily winnable. Otherwise, I agree. One of the floating reds is going to be a Lava Spike. The Steamkins get to 1 counter. A Magalhaes to 6. Soul Scar Mage with another floating red. Steamkins to 2 counters.
If this last card is Light Up the Stage or Bedlam Reveler, we could have one heck of a turn.
So he's already cast 2 instants, right? So this just this removal spell on the Emery makes this lethal, if this all works.
Yep.
I believe Magalhaes has been clutching an Archmage's Charm, though.
Ooh, I wonder if he's going to steal the Monastery Swiftspear before attacks.
Here's a Lava Dart. That's going to flash back on the Emery, presumably. There's kind of an interesting line, but the sizing doesn't quite work out. So the only spell cast after Soulscar Mage was Lava Dart. If it had 1 more prowess trigger, you might really be able to turn the tides by Archmaging Charming the Soulscar Mage. I suppose you'd have to have if you had a Fatal Push to go with that. For example, if Magalhaes' hand was Archmage's Charm, Fatal Push, you wait for attacks, Steamkin, Swiftspear come across, you take control of the Soulscar Mage, block the Steamkin, push the Swiftspear.
Right.
It would take a very specific composition. Right, so the Islet is cracked. Manamorphose picked up. Whitehouse certainly not shy on mana with these Steamkins. 2 red floating. First Steamkin's back to 3. The second's at 2. Down to 1 red mana floating. There's a Lightning Bolt. Right, now it's a bit too much. I don't know if Magalhaes could have a composition that gets out from here.
Well, only 2 of these creatures can attack. So if Magalhaes just steals the Swiftspear here, which he does, now this is just big enough to block the Runaway Steamkin, right?
Yeah, that is absolutely true. Lightning Bolt put Magalhaes to 3. Steamkin looks like it's still attacking, though. Yeah, Archmage's Charm did grab the Steamkin, or the Swiftspear, rather. It is large. And it's a pretty easy block for Magalhaes. Steamkin down.
Yeah, that's potentially a huge misstep from Whitehouse here. Magalhaes can also untap, put Mystic Sanctuary on the battlefield, get back Archmage's Charm, and steal the Soulscar Mage. With Whitehouse with no cards in hand, nothing in graveyard of consequence, only 1 land, has a Fatal Push for the Runaway Steamkin.
Yeah, so fetch for Sanctuary, put the Fatal Push on top. That was milled off of the Emery earlier. We go to Magalhaes. Tap of 3, it's Oko. All right, Oko is actually a really important missing piece of the puzzle because Magalhaes was at 2.
Right.
If he can just get out of this turn maintaining these creatures, you start cracking those food tokens, Magalhaes can start to really peel back into this one.
You got to imagine that attack with the Runaway Steamkin into a big Monastery Swiftspear was a huge mistake from Whitehouse, and he is getting obliterated because of it.
There's the push on the Steamkin, and that turns off some of Whitehouse's relevant draws. He's on to 1 land because he had to use the Islet. He's been flashing back Lava Darts. So anything that costs 2 or more is not going to play here.
Now, if you're Edgar, the question is, do you tick up and make a food and hope that next turn you survive enough to start gaining the life, or do you make a 3/3 for blocking purposes?
So he made a food, played Watery Grave tap. Whitehouse is going to cast a Crash Through. But that's going to be it for spells this turn. Attack for 2, chump block from the Swiftspear, and we go back to Magalhaes, now on tapping with that food and that Oko on 6.
Yeah, it looks like he also found Engineer Explosive as a draw for turn, so he can cast that for 1. It is going to blow up his Arkham's Astrolabes, but at this point, he just wants to contain. He's also can make another food, sack it to go up to 5. It's going to put him out of range of normal burn spells like Bolt and Lava Spike, but combined with the Soulscar Mage, those do present lethal, so he can either choose to pop the explosives or can choose to crack the food.
So 1 up to 5, as he mentioned. Just going to use that explosives before the Soulscar Mage can do any damage. Mountain Go from Whitehouse. Magalhaes now with an Oko on 8 loyalty. Plays a Misty Rainforest. Oko goes to 10, makes a food. But that Rainforest represents a pretty good spell here. So Magalhaes is going to have a second Mystic Sanctuary in the deck.
Yeah, the Mystic Sanctuary is a huge pickup for these Urza decks simply because they allow you to prevent actual flooding, right? Like you get to get the Archmage Charm back, get Cryptic Command, or removal spells like Fatal Push back. It's just such an upgrade to these decks. The original iterations of these Urza decks were all playing the Prismatic Vista, the one that searched up any basic, snow basic rather, but with the printing of Mystic Sanctuary, it just completely changed the dynamic of the archetype.
Definitely an upgrade there. Whitehouse fired off a Burst Lightning end step. Idea there being if he draws a Bedlam Revelry, so it gets the 2 points, even though they seem unlikely to matter. Drew and played a Soulscar Mage. So we go back to Magalhaes, found that Sanctuary, redrew Archmage's Charm, so he's pretty well insulated now. Oko at 11, food became an Elk that can block the Soulscar Mage. Just a draw and a go from Whitehouse. For Magalhaes, Oko going up to 12. Sorry, make that 13. Makes another food token. Misty Rainforest. That one a bit worse than the last one. He'll pass. And Whitehouse has got to pick him up.
Yeah, he's shaking his head there. You know that he knows he made a huge mistake, and he's going to have to shake it off if he wants to come back and win this match. He's got 2 potential games left in this match against Edgar Magalhaes, one of the best players on the SCG Tour, playing one of the best decks in the format. It's going to be a tough uphill battle.
Players going to sideboard here for Magalhaes. He's got 4 Mystical Dispute, 3 Ashiok Dream Render, 2 Fatal Push, 2 Maelstrom Pulse, 2 Future Sight, an Unmoored Ego, and a Ceremonious Rejection.
I like lowering the curve slightly, bring in a little more cheap interaction. Fatal Push, Maelstrom Pulse, both coming in, I would guess, and both going to be pretty good.
Right, for Evan Whitehouse, we have 4 Bone Crusher Giant, 3 Blood Moon, 3 Dragon's Claw, 2 Lay Out of the Void, 2 Smash Smithereens, and an Abrade.
As we talked about yesterday, I think Bone Crusher Giant is going to be one of the better sideboard options here just because a lot of those creatures from Magalhaes do die to the Stomp effect, and then he gets to follow it up with a 4/3 body effectively for free afters. Bone Crusher Giant is one of those cards that's excellent when Stomp actually kills stuff, and, you know, worthy of a sideboard slot out of these mono prowess decks when you expect the games to go a lot longer. So I expect the 4 Bone Crusher Giants to come in. The Smash Smithereens I'm a little bit hit or miss on. Obviously, if you can take out a Mox Opal early in the game and slow down the development, it's fine. But as we talked about time and time again, Disenchant effects not very good against Sultai Urza because it's not about the specific artifact. It's about amassing a lot of random artifacts that don't really have consequential impacts on the game by themselves.
Right, and I tend to prefer Abrade in the matchup because it kills Emery.
Yes, Abrade does seem good, yep.
But if you're looking for more action from these players, we certainly have that and a ton more Magic over on our YouTube page.
Oh, yeah.
Old Versus Live archives. Go watch Todd battling it out there.
Oh, you can go back and watch the match where Brad Nelson played against Ross Merriam, and I ran over and smashed the top of the deck. And Ross peeled Banefire and went wild. It was excellent.
Also, well as Commander versus Flashback, all the best of the SCG Tour, and so much more. Appreciate it if you'd subscribe to our page over there at youtube.com/StarCityGames.
Yeah, if you're into Magic content, the YouTube page on StarCityGames.com is excellent. And on top of that, we've also been adding more stuff from Corey Baumeister, doing Dropping Bombs, I believe. And that comes out, I believe, once a week. Don't quote me on that, though. I'm not in charge of his content.
I mean, even just if your scope is spending time on YouTube, there are much worse ways to spend your time on YouTube.
Yes, there are. That is certainly true. You ever watch someone do a review of, like, a potato chip?
God, no.
I have. I watched... Well, it was actually a great video. But Sungwon, Pros D, did a review of all the Pringles he could find in 3 different stores, I believe. It was roughly 20 different types of Pringle.
Oh, wow.
And he ate all of them. Or he didn't eat the whole of each one, but he tried he probably ate like 40 or 50 Pringles in one sitting to try them.
I buy that as an entertaining video product to consume, but the thing about Pringles is all the flavors taste exactly the same.
That is wildly untrue.
No, they're just very bland. They are the most bland potato chip. Hot take. I'm firing up the hot take cannon.
That's fine. Have you
coming out?
You cannot tell me. You cannot tell me that sour cream and onion Pringles taste the same as pizza Pringles. Not to say that either of them are good, but they do not taste remotely the same.
Pringles are the LaCroix of potato chips. The flavor is technically there and different.
Technically there, technically different. It's the friggin' White Claw.
Yes.
No laws when you're eating Pringles.
There's only one law. That's once you pop,
you can't.
You don't stop.
Yeah, well, they kept telling me that, but I kept not eating them after I.
And yet, I stopped.
Yeah.
It's like Whitehouse on a mulligan for game number 2 here.
Man, we really blew the Pringles.
The potential sponsorship.
Yeah, sponsorship deal. Damn.
Of the companies that could theoretically sponsor a Magic tournament, I guess Pringles is probably a
pretty
bad
high.
bridge to burn.
You're right.
I'm sorry, Cedric.
Yeah.
I hope that you were not in talks with Pringles currently. Oh, yeah, we do Cheetos.
Oh, but Cheetos. Oh, yeah, Cheetos are the best.
Yo, Doritos? Call me.
Crunchy Cheetos or poofy Cheetos?
Yes.
Preference.
I prefer crunchy.
Yes! No one else ever prefers crunchy except me. They always make fun of me. They're like, what are you talking about? Poos for life.
Those are just good chips.
Right.
What's wrong?
Yeah.
You need better friends, man.
I agree.
Whitehouse has kept on 6. Looks like Mountain versus Floodstrand. Turn 2 for Whitehouse. Fire Dialet goes to 19. Manamorphose. And where do we go from here? Red in the pool. We got that Steamkin.
No, we got a bolt.
Lightning bolt you.
You know what that means? Some stages getting lit up.
You would hope so.
Yeah.
This card 17. There's the light up.
Card's so much worse when you don't have a 1-mana creature on the battlefield.
Finds Lava Dart.
Jeez, Batman.
Finds Lava Dart Mountain. Jeez, turn around a light up with a Lava Dart. That's an acceptable cost. Blowing a lightning bolt, though, doesn't feel great.
No, it doesn't. But Whitehouse did take a mulligan, kept a hand without a 1-mana creature or a runaway Steamkin. I think I might have gone to 5. You just have to put some pressure on the opponent. When you're burning a lightning bolt to cast light up the stage, your card economy is not growing. Just go to 5. Look for that threat.
Magalhaes to 16, finding a breeding pool tapped. Put about the least permanence I've ever seen an Urza player put on the battlefield so far.
Please just go like Sanctuary tap. Mystic Sanctuary tapped, your go. Just can't cast Arkham's Astrolabe. I'm just rooting for the sadness.
Misty Rainforest, go. Whitehouse is a pretty stacked turn of Mountain Lava Dart lined up here.
That's the floor.
The floor.
The floor
it's at least that.
Mountain and Dart you, okay? There's probably another Light Up Sage hanging out. I mean, what else could there be?
I hope so for Whitehouse's sake. We see Dart upstairs, Magalhaes to 15. There's the Mountain, and there is Light Up.
Now, if he finds a 1-mana creature here, or Bedlam Reveler, there's a chance that he could, get himself into this game. Now, Edgar also isn't putting any pressure on him. Now, he might fire up an Oko this turn, and that's going to be maybe tough for Whitehouse, but with that bolt floating, all he needs is 3 more damage to be able to kill it.
I mean, yes, but there's the issue where if the Oko shows up, you really feel bad in Whitehouse's seat because you just blew a lightning bolt as Lava Spike already,
Well, true.
And he's also on a mulligan. Like, he could maybe clean up the Oko, but there's a real then what kind of question.
See, my guess, and this is probably an easy guess for anyone who plays Prowess, is that Whitehouse actually just has at least 1 Bedlam Reveler in hand and is just trying to spin, cast all the stuff, and then eventually play Bedlam Reveler on turn 4 or 5 to start actually pressuring Edgar. Because that burst of card advantage from the Bedlam Reveler can recoup all of the Lava Spikes and Lava Darts and everything you've been kind of quote-unquote burning to throw at your opponent's head. But it's like you're starting the game on 3 cards and your opponent's at 9. And that's not terrible.
So we saw a fetch end step. Edgar went to 14. Just an island and a pass, though, so maybe faded the Oko, but Edgar also could be sandbaking one because of that lightning bolt, which we see Whitehouse using end step.
Yeah, I mean, if you really think about it, the lightning bolt there sitting on the light up the stage is kind of like a suspended rift bolt. And if you have a creature that dies to bolt, you don't necessarily want to like throw it under the bus. But if you're playing against a burn deck, there's also a lot to be said about just protecting your life total by forcing them to interact with you.
Well, here's a threat at long last as we see the Islet deployed from Whitehouse. We see Soulscar Mage plus Bone Crusher Giant taking a couple points over these spells here, going to 16 off of those Islets. Magalhaes now at 11. I believe that we are currently on Whitehouse's end step. Maybe Magalhaes has something to clean up the battlefield a little.
Yeah, I can see an Oko floating in his hand, so it looks like he did choose to just not deploy that last turn. My guess is that something is about to hit the bin. I don't know if it's Abrupt Decay on the Bone Crusher Giant, because that does hit Edgar down to 19 from the triggered effect.
9, rather.
Oh, it's a counterspell. Okay, so the Bone Crusher Giant was still on the stack.
Yeah, that's caught by Archmage's Charm. Seems fair. From 11, you don't want to have to target that thing.
Right. And now you can play Oko, start ticking up. But with Soulscar Mage on the battlefield, could have a pretty big turn next turn. But I also think turning into a 3/3 Elk is also not desirable either.
Here's Oko. It's going to make a food. And we see Opal plus Explosives on a 0.
So that does give him access to Mox Opal mana, thanks to the food token. So he has access to Fatal Push right now. Would have access to Metallic Rebuke. Not in his list, but maybe Whitehouse doesn't know that.
Mountain Bedlam Reveler, like you mentioned, might have been the payoff for Whitehouse the whole time. See how well it works out. He will draw 3, just discards a Mountain too, so no real cost there.
Yeah, played his land for a turn already, so he didn't have to discard 2 cards to the Bedlam Reveler.
Crash through. Well, that's good. Soulscar Mage up to a 2.
And there's a Lava Dart over there, so I believe that is, no, not quite enough to kill the Oko by itself.
I would be just flabbergasted if Magalhaes does not have the Fatal Push. There it is. Whitehouse thinking about using these Islets. I want to say another prowess creature was picked up in those Reveler holdings. He's going to pass the turn, though. And the Reveler, that's an enticing Elk target. It's already a 3-power creature. You know, you're removing the prowess. It
Right.
can be a big deal.
No, for sure. I mean, we've seen Bedlam Reveler get turned into a 3/3 yesterday, so it was vulnerable to Anger of the Gods. That was nice.
Here's something you don't want to do. I've had opponents do this to me. So Oko can trade objects with the -5 for a 3-power creature, but if Whitehouse is sitting on a spell and casts that in response, the exchange just doesn't happen because the creature now has 4 power. So watch out for that one. But it is going to be Urza for Magalhaes, and then Elkifying that Bedlam Reveler. Pretty powerful swing, and Emery as well. Huge turn for Magalhaes.
Yeah, and you're really starting to see what this deck can do. You know, this is just the turning point in the game. We had a close game, and now the text box from the other side of the battlefield no longer relevant. Urza generating a ton of extra mana, ton of extra value from just being able to potentially start spinning next turn, as well as the Construct token, which is currently a 4/4. So, Magalhaes looking in pretty solid shape here, if you ask me.
Whitehouse will use the Islet to go to 15 to Burst Lightning the Emery, though that's just one problem, and honestly, the least threatening of the 3 with the Oko and the Urza still looming.
Yeah, unless he has some plans for like a big turn here, you could have made an argument that he needs to just kick Burst Lightning on the Urza after untapping, since he already had access to 5 mana.
Sure.
With that said, that is kind of a waste of a turn-ish, because Emery is still extremely good. And not having the ability to start sacrificing Fire Islet and spending effectively your whole turn to kill an Urza is a pretty big feels bad. But, you know, what are you going to do?
Right. Here's a Mountain. Lightning Bolt on the Construct. Looks like it's a 3 currently. Or actually, no, it's a 4.
I think he's got Smash Smithereens or something, or he's looking for a combo kill. He also has Lava Dart in the graveyard, so he can kill the Construct here.
Here's a second Reveler. That's a nice one. One of the 3 cards picked up was a land that has already played one this turn. really want spells in the next turn. You know, if you can have a good turn this turn, you go into your next turn, you can use those islets. Now that you have a lot of mana to work with. But really has to get some of this stuff off the battlefield quickly. Whitehouse going to 14. Off of the islet. I think all this damage on him has been dealt by himself. Going to use Manamorphose. Red, draw a card.
Think I should splash black for Death Shadow, or?
I have tinkered with Shadow Prowess hybrids. Because, you know, you think Thoughtseize, that's a sorcery, you know. It's not good. Don't do that.
I was going to say, you were like, yeah, I've experimented with Prowess before. I was like, well, when you play the same deck for like a year, you got to start trying some stuff. It gets boring.
I broadcast less the dozens of failed similar decks.
Yeah.
One of those floating mana is going to be Monastery Swiftspear.
Everyone sees the 5-0 list that get posted. Not as many people see the like 2 in the morning dumpster fire that you brewed up, and you play one match. You're like, oh, this just does not work.
Oh, my deck doesn't function, and my sideboard is 13 cards. I don't know. Lava Dart's going to finish off that construct, and then here's Soulscar Mage with that last floating mana. We see an attack with Elk and Swiftspear coming at that Oko.
Yeah, that bolt earlier, 3 damage on the construct, looked a little odd, but knowing that he had the Lava Dart in the graveyard made a bit of sense. Plus, if he was able to just draw a Braid or smash a Smithereens, could have popped the Mox Opal or the food token and ultimately took down the construct that way. So he was kind of splitting the difference. Obviously, could have gone after the Urza instead to contain the spin ability as well as the mana generation, but is taking the more aggressive approach by taking care of the 4/4 blocker that was going to be in his way for the rest of the game.
Right. And part of the rationale there has to be that this 3/3 just can't attack into a 4/4.
Exactly. So both these creatures coming in. That Swiftspear is not too big. I think it just has 1 Prowess trigger from the Manamorphose, but I'm not positive.
I think it's got the backside of the dart too, does it not?
Could be. We'll see once the life total / loyalty changes here. There's a lot of verbal communication going on.
Magic Online would tell us. See a block on the Elk from the Urza.
Yeah, but it also doesn't tell us the 2 modes on a Texas Cryptic command, so it's like a coin flip.
There's some give and take. Yeah. Urza's going, or Oko rather, is going down to 2 from the hit on the Swiftspear. So Magalhaes lost his construct, but is now on tapping with Oko and Urza.
That is a powerful sentence.
Right.
Untapping with Oko and Urza. The floor here is make a food token, and he has access to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 mana. That's the floor.
There's a lot of threats on the other side of the table now, though. Reveler and 2 1-drops were added.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Bedlam Reveler, a huge boost for Whitehouse after having that really slow start. Bedlam Reveler is one of the stronger cards in the deck, but it's one of those cards that's like pretty horrible in multiples because a second one in your hand is effectively a dead card that has to get discarded. But at the same time, like, once it's on the battlefield, it's such a huge creature to start on top of having Prowess. Spin from the Urza here, finds a Gilded Goose that could give him some life points to work with, but Whitehouse still has 2 copies of Fire Islet to crack.
So now the Oko is just going to -5, trades Opal for Reveler while the shields are down for a spell in response. Scalding Tarn, do the follow-up, and he'll pass from there.
I mean, that's a pretty bold play from Magalhaes because Whitehouse could have any of those 1-mana cards, but if you think about it, Whitehouse would have probably played that card on the previous turn to deal extra damage to the Oko.
Right.
So it seems like a risky play, but in essence, it's effectively free.
And when you're facing down this much stuff, the Reveler is just more valuable as a 3/4 blocker.
Right.
Especially, there's already one of these prowess creatures elked. The 1/2s need some work to be able to tango just with the 3/4 Reveler. And then another Oko off the top at any point, even if he Urzas into it. Once you start elking those other creatures or, just explosives them away,
right,
the Reveler maintains pretty well.
No, for sure. I mean, The injury explosive sitting on the battlefield right now is at 0, but if an Emery gets picked up or a second injury explosive just to take out the one-mana creatures, that's going to be all she wrote for Whitehouse. He needs to get this game over with quickly.
Whitehouse is going to crack Fiery Outlet, play Sunbaked Canyon, crack that one too. Now you see Elk, Swift Spear, and Soulscar Mage attacking.
Yeah. Now, with the Soulscar Mage in the mix, being able to shrink toughness is a huge deal. Or shrink power and toughness is a huge deal because it'll make combat math a bit worse. I have to imagine if Edgar is going to be blocking in this manner, then that means Edgar has a way to actually kill the Soulscar Mage here in response, but I could be wrong.
So we see Reveler in front of Elk Reveler, Urza in front of Soulscar Mage. Whitehouse is going to Burst Lightning Urza, but like you said, there's Abrupt Decay for the Soulscar Mage, so the Burst Lightning could have really changed the texture of combat, but not to be.
I'm just going to point out how exceptional that block was from Edgar. So Edgar actually chose to block the Soulscar Mage instead of the Monastery Swift Spear. If he blocks Monastery Swift Spear, the Burst Lightning still resolves, deals 2 damage to the Urza. Swift Spear gets pumped, deals 2 more damage to the Urza. He blocked the Soulscar Mage, knowing that he's probably going to kill it in combat, and that ultimately ended with him not losing his Urza and Whitehouse's battlefield just becoming nothing.
Yep, great navigation. You're exactly right. Magalhaes ended up taking 2 points to 9 and then to 8 off a fetch to Mystic Sanctuary, but 8 with a couple food and redrawing Archmage's Charm, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I would say that it's probably way too good here for Whitehouse to overcome. He had his marquee card in Bedlam Reveler here stolen on the previous turn. Last turn he got completely obliterated in combat thanks to the Abrupt Decay on a Soulscar Mage. And now he's facing down an Urza, a Bedlam Reveler, and a Gilded Goose making extra food tokens every single turn. It is dim.
Goose makes a food, Magalhaes passes, leaving up that Archmage's Charm. Whitehouse is going to draw, and then draw again off of that Fiery Islet. Crash through. And Whitehouse was heavy on mana before, but after using some darts and some Horizon lands, just 3 lands on the battlefield now. Only 1 untapped land after that crash through. And the Swift Spear just not as large as the other creatures.
And not only is it not as large as the other creatures, but at any point it can just get stolen with the Archmage's Charm. So if Whitehouse does turn into a real threat, you know, there's no fear from Magalhaes because he will just steal it.
Mountain and an attack. Magalhaes will block with Reveler. Whitehouse is going to smash his miseries on a food token. Magalhaes will just eat that, go to 11.
Just going to gain 3 life in response. The Swift Spear is still just a 3/4, so it bounces, and Whitehouse just picks him up. That's the game.
It just kind of gets to this tipping point where the Prowess deck can hang